We're going to be starting off this festive season food prep by making my favourite addition to any festive meal, and it is bread sauce. Now, if you're not from the UK or you've never lived here, you may not know what bread sauce is, but it might sound disgusting, it might look a little strange, but honestly, it's just a beautiful accompaniment to any festive meal. Here I'm just putting some cloves into some red onion. Red onions are sweet, and also cloves add such a beautiful aromatic smell and taste to bread sauce. I put the milk, I'm using a non-dairy milk, into the pan, and then I add in about 5 to 6 peppercorns along with the peppers, what am I talking about? Along with the red onions and cloves. I'm just going to bring this up to before boiling, and after it kind of reaches that point where it's about to boil, or oops, I left it a bit too long, then I take it off the heat and I put a lid on it and leave it for about 2 hours. This makes it smell and taste just divine. Okay, moving on to cranberry sauce. This is one of my favorites yet again. Now, I'm using some oranges, probably not the most sustainable thing at this time of year, but I allow myself to make some dishes that don't have necessarily all seasonal fruit and vegetables, because the festive season is a time to unwind and chill out a bit and realize that we're not all perfect. So for my cranberry sauce, I just use 100 milliliters of orange juice, which I have squeezed myself. And of course, I overestimated how much I might need, so I just drank the rest of it and it was delish. I'm also going to use the zest of one small clementine if you have them. Of course you can use the bigger oranges, but I just use those peels to make a homemade DIY cleaner, because vinegar smells like vinegar and it's nice to add in a bit of orange. Okay, so I'm just adding that to the bowl, well, the pot. I'm going to be adding in some sugar. I used too much. I used 100 grams and that was way too much. I would suggest using half the amount, or maybe 75 grams. I'm just going to dissolve the sugar in the orange juice before adding my fresh cranberries. If you do like this video, guys, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another cooking video with me. Okay, adding the delicious fresh cranberries to the pot, and I'm going to be cooking for about 5 to 10 minutes until it breaks down a little bit, but the cranberries still hold their shape. And once that happens, honestly, that's it, guys. It is such a simple thing to make, and it makes a lot more when you make it yourself. But again, you know, if you can't be bothered, that's fine. You can always buy it. Buy it from a farmer's market, buy it from a shop, wherever you want. So I just put that on the side, put a lid on it and leave it to cool. Now this can just go straight in the fridge, or you can eat it straight away. It's up to you. Okay, back to the bread sauce. I now need to make some breadcrumbs. Of course, you can just buy breadcrumbs, but I wanted to support my local bakery because I love them and they've struggled a little bit this year. So I'm just weighing out about 150 grams of white bread that I'm going to churn into some breadcrumbs.
Wasn't the Bronte brother called Brown?
Yeah, no, I don't. But maybe.
Turns out that these weren't actually small enough for my preference, so just make sure you make your breadcrumbs as small as you want. I'm just going to take out the chunky bits, so the red onion and any black peppercorns I can find, but I don't worry too much. Then I add the breadcrumbs in, all to the pot. Now this is a stage at which some of you guys might be like, what is that absolute gruel? But I promise you, it's delicious. I'm adding in a bit of salt and pepper just to season, and then I personally like to add some vegan butter, but you definitely don't need it if you don't want to use it, or if you can't get hold of any either. And that's it. I put it to the side to cool down, and then I can put it in the fridge for later. Okay, on to mince pies. I've never made mince pies before actually. And this is my first time trying to make them. I've just got some vegan butter and some plain flour in there, and I'm actually using a Madeline Olivia recipe, so I'll put her recipe in the recipe box below. Yeah. Honestly, it was much easier than I thought it was, and I was actually surprised that they were really good, because I've never tried to make something like this before. I'm not really a baker, guys. I'm not really a baker, so yeah. If you want the recipe, full recipe down below, as I said, I'll link it in the description. You should definitely go and check it out. I'm just rolling. I didn't roll these thin enough the first time, but this was just a pure experiment for me, because I wanted to see if this is something I could continue doing. Because my mum used to make mince pies every year, and she'd freeze them, or she'd make loads in advance, and I actually keep for such a long time. I was really quite surprised. So yeah, I thought I'd just try and make them myself and see if I can get a little into baking. So don't judge my method too much, because this was my first try. And as I said, some of these first ones were a little thick, so I did roll it thinner eventually. I'm also using a pre-made mincemeat thing. For those of you who don't know what mince pies are, mincemeat, it's not actually a meat. It's just made out of fruits and berries and things like that, and raisins and apricots and stuff like that. So it's completely vegan. It has vegetable suet in it as well, so nothing from an animal. And yeah, I just decided to buy it this year because I wanted to try making just the pastry and putting it together. I wasn't sure how hard it was going to be, but also again, I supported a local shop with their homemade mincemeat, and so I thought, we're doing good stuff, but next year I'm definitely going to try making it myself, now that I've realised the pastry is actually super easy. I'm thinking of doing another one of these videos, because there's another Madeline and Olivia recipe that I haven't quite got round to making, but it does sound good. Yep, anyway, so I'm putting these in my oven for about, well, this oven is actually not as hot as you think, so she suggests maybe 20-25 minutes, but I left it in there for about 40.
Are you guarding the mince pies, huh? Are you guarding the mince pies?
I think you are. I was pretty happy with them, I won't lie. Of course they all spilled out the side. That was my fault. I didn't pinch them together or whatever, and I overfilled them. But they tasted good, and to me that's all that matters. You just gotta be careful when you're leaving them to cool down, because the sugar from the inside definitely stuck it to the pan. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to be making is a risotto based nut roast, because I do love a nut roast, but I don't want too many nuts. And this is actually a Jamie Oliver recipe, so I can't take any credit for this. I will be putting the link to his one in the description below. Now his is a vegetarian recipe, so I decided to veganize it, of course. You of course can do whatever you want. It's meant to be a pistachio and almond nut roast, as I said, with a risotto base. Again, I don't usually use things like almonds or pistachios because, well, they don't grow locally in the UK. So this, again, was a very special treat for Christmas. And I think if we can't treat ourselves and we can't like loosen, the values, not the values that we live by, but kind of loosen the parameters of things, so around Christmas time or the festive season, then I don't know, sometimes I think we need to make sure we're not too strict on ourselves and do our best and just make sure we're living in alignment with our values, whilst also just trying to enjoy parts of our lives. And food is something that I'm becoming more and more in love with. I definitely didn't used to love cooking at all, but recently I've become sort of, I don't know, this video is one of the most enjoyable videos I think I've ever made. Maybe because it's making me feel Christmassy, maybe because just the rituals or the fact that I prepared a lot better for this one. I actually measured everything out ahead of time. I put everything into the kind of groups for each recipe. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I really enjoyed it, and I think I'm actually getting better at cooking. This risotto base is great. It's got some porcini mushrooms in it, as you could see, some red onion and some stock. So once that's actually cooling, I'm going to be chopping up some mushrooms. And these mushrooms, they were supposed to be wild mushrooms, but I couldn't find any. So I just used what I could find. And these actually go on top later on. My only adjustment for this would be that actually I would cook these just before my nut roast was ready, because they were cold by the time my nut roast was ready, and that didn't really make sense to me. Anyway, I'm just roasting the nuts that I'm supposed to put in, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is a really long process, just to warn you if you guys do try it. These nuts I'm processing, they actually just go on top, they don't go in the nut roast. That surprised me a bit. Anyway, back to the inside. So again, another adjustment is the recipe only calls for two sprigs of each herb that it requires, but for me that wasn't enough. I feel like fresh herbs are one of the best thing about eating fresh foods, so I basically double or tripled some of them. I love sage and I love thyme, and I do love rosemary. No, I like rosemary, I don't love rosemary. I also doubled the amount of lemon zest. Sometimes I feel like the cooking process doesn't allow for the intricacies of some of these flavors, so yeah. Anyway, I add my risotto once it's cooled to this bowl so I can add everything else in. And again, another adjustment, the recipe calls for cheddar cheese. I just decided to go for a vegan version instead of omitting, but you can obviously completely omit it. It also calls for 2 eggs, but again, I completely omitted those. But the cheese that I went for was by Violife, because it's one of the only ones that I've tried that I actually like the taste of. To be honest, vegan cheese is not my jam. It's not great, I won't lie. Some will disagree with me. I mean, even Violife tastes a bit... Anyway, let's not get into a discussion about vegan cheese. Okay, so I'm making a kind of... It's not a cranberry sauce, but the recipe kind of is a cranberry topped nut roast. And all you have to do is cook those for a couple of minutes and then put them in the top of whatever tin that you're using. Again, I use some vegan butter to go around the outside, make sure it doesn't stick, but you never know, you just have to hope and pray that it comes out. And that's pretty much it. Then you shove it in the oven for about 45 minutes, covered, and then you take it out again for another 15 minutes, uncovered. And I'm just getting it out now, and I just remember how excited I was, but how nervous I was. Things in tins always scare me because I'm so worried it's not gonna, be perfect. But yeah, you just leave it for 10 minutes to sort of settle, and then you flip it. But here I was getting impatient because it just smelled so good and I was just so excited, and I just kept thinking, I want to eat you. I just want to put a fork in you and I just want to eat you. Okay, here is the moment of truth, guys. I was nervous to do this on live on the camera, but I did it and I was excited. I tried to lift this off without a tea towel and obviously it was too hot. I don't know what I was thinking, but okay, I mean, that's pretty good, guys. Look at that. That's why the cranberries at the top is beautiful. It just makes it look a bit spectacular, to be honest. And I was so happy with it. So happy with the way it turned out. This is the point that you put all your trimmings on, so just before it comes out or while it's settling, that's when I would actually recommend to make your mushrooms. Make them nice and take them off when they're just about crispy, and top your nut roast. And then this is where you add on your nuts. I personally thought there were way too many nuts. It called for 100 grams of pistachios and 100 grams of almonds. I would quarter that because I had ended up putting most of them back in a jar to use for something else. But yeah, that's it. I'm going to put all my adjustments to the recipes that I did use from other people, so the Madeline Olivia one and the Jamie Olive one, in the description below. But the 2 other ones were mine and I will leave them down below, although probably everyone uses them. A huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. If you don't know Squarespace, it gives people a powerful and beautiful online platform from which to create your website. I create my website from Squarespace and I just love the freedom it gives me. Squarespace has powerful blogging tools to tell my story and share my updates, to post photos and videos and categorize, share and schedule all my posts to make my content work for me. So if you're interested, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/sustainablyvegan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.